The morning sun hit the sidewalk on Fifth Avenue, and Daniel was already awake. He'd been awake since 4:30, actually. When you sleep on cardboard, every sound wakes you up. Car horns, drunk people stumbling home, garbage trucks making their rounds. After a while, your body just stops trying to sleep deeply. Daniel sat with his back against the brick wall of a closed-down bookstore. His green army jacket hung loose on his shoulders. It used to fit him perfectly, back when he had another 40 pounds on his frame. Back when he had an apartment. Back when he had a life that made sense. That jacket was the only thing left from his 21 years in the Marines. Everything else was gone. The medals, the photographs, the certificates with his name printed in fancy letters. He'd sold most of it when the money ran out. Kept the jacket because, well, some things you just can't let go of. People walked past him like he was part of the scenery. A fire hydrant. A mailbox. Something that's always been there and always will be. Most folks looked down at their phones. Some looked away on purpose, like homelessness might be contagious if they made eye contact. A few people dropped coins into his old baseball cap. He always said thank you, even when they were already 10 feet away and couldn't hear him. Daniel watched the morning crowd rush to work. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone had someone waiting for them somewhere. He used to be like that too. Used to set an alarm, drink coffee from the same mug every morning, complain about traffic like everyone else. Now his only schedule was figuring out which shelter might have an open bed, which church was serving lunch, which spots the police would leave him alone. Across the street stood this massive glass building that looked like it was made entirely of mirrors. Hartwell Industries, the sign said. Daniel had been sitting on this corner for 8 months, and he'd watched that building every single day. People in expensive suits going in and out. Everyone walking fast, talking on phones, carrying leather briefcases. Around 8:15 every morning, a black town car pulled up to the front entrance. Same car, same time, like clockwork. A driver would get out and open the back door, and this man in a perfectly pressed suit would step out. He looked like the kind of guy who made decisions that affected thousands of people before he even finished his breakfast. Sometimes a teenage girl got out of the car with him. His daughter, Daniel assumed. She had that look kids get when they've never had to worry about where their next meal comes from. Not spoiled exactly, just innocent. Protected, the way kids should look. The girl noticed Daniel sometimes. She'd glance over while waiting at the crosswalk, her eyes curious but uncertain, like she wanted to understand but didn't know how. Daniel always looked away first. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. Didn't want her thinking he was dangerous or crazy or any of the other things people assumed about folks like him. The funny thing was, Daniel used to be the guy in the suit. Not as fancy as the ones going into that glass building, but nice enough. He'd worked in construction management. Had a crew of 15 guys who respected him. Made decent money. Owned a small house in the suburbs. But when he came back from his last deployment, something inside him had changed. The noise wouldn't stop. The memories wouldn't fade. He'd be at a job site and suddenly he'd be back in Kandahar, watching his buddy Mike step on something he shouldn't have stepped on. He'd be driving home and a car would backfire and he'd swerve into the next lane, heart pounding, hands shaking. He started drinking to quiet things down. Just a couple beers at night, then a couple more, then a bottle, then whatever he could get his hands on. His wife tried to help. God, she tried. But Daniel pushed her away. Pushed everyone away. When you hate yourself enough, you make sure everyone else hates you too. Feels more honest that way. The drinking cost him his job, then his house, then his marriage. His daughter stopped returning his calls. He didn't blame her. What kind of father becomes this? He got sober 2 years ago at a veterans shelter downtown. Went through the shakes, the nightmares, the whole ugly process. But by then he'd burned every bridge. No references. No work history that made sense. No address to put on applications. Try explaining a 2-year gap to an employer when that gap includes sleeping in a tent behind a grocery store. So here he was, 46 years old, a decorated Marine who'd served his country in 3 different war zones, sitting on a sidewalk hoping to collect enough change to buy a hot meal. The Tuesday morning crowd thinned out around 9. Daniel stretched his legs, feeling his knees crack. Everything hurt these days. Sleeping on concrete does that to a body. He probably should have gone to the VA hospital weeks ago for the cough that wouldn't quit, but the waiting lists were long and the bureaucracy was exhausting. He watched the town car pull up again. Same car, different time. The teenage girl got out alone this time, carrying a backpack covered in patches and pins. She said something to the driver, who nodded and pulled away from the curb. Daniel's military training kicked in automatically. He started scanning the area without even thinking about it. Old habits. Always know your surroundings. Always identify potential threats. Always have an exit strategy. That's when he noticed the man in the dark hoodie. Most people wouldn't have seen anything wrong. The guy looked normal enough. But Daniel had spent years learning to read body language to spot the things that didn't fit. The way the man was walking, not too fast but too focused. The way he was matching the girl's pace exactly, staying about 15 feet behind her. The way his hands were in his pockets but his shoulders were tense. The girl turned down the alley that cut between 5th and 7th Street. Lots of people used that shortcut. It was usually safe, usually busy enough, but not this morning. The man in the hoodie quickened his pace. Daniel's body moved before his brain caught up. His legs felt weak. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but adrenaline is a powerful thing. 21 years of training doesn't just disappear because you're homeless. 21 years of protecting people doesn't turn off because you've lost everything. He pushed himself up from the wall and started moving toward the alley. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking, but not from fear. From purpose. For the first time in years, Daniel had a mission. Someone needed help and maybe he couldn't save himself. Maybe he'd lost that chance a long time ago. But he could still save someone else. Daniel's legs moved faster than they had in months. Every muscle in his body protested. 8 months of malnutrition doesn't prepare you for running. But his mind was sharp, focused. This was something he knew how to do. He reached the alley entrance just as the man in the hoodie grabbed the girl's arm. Her scream cut through the morning air, high and terrified. The sound that every parent dreads. The sound that makes strangers become heroes. The man was trying to yank her backpack off her shoulders. She held on, pulling back, her phone clattering to the ground. "Let her go." Daniel's voice came out with all the authority of a gunnery sergeant commanding troops. It was a voice he hadn't used in years, but it came back instantly. The attacker spun around, still gripping the girl's arm. He was younger than Daniel, stronger, better fed, but he wasn't expecting resistance. Nobody expects the homeless guy to get involved. Daniel didn't hesitate. He put himself between the attacker and the girl, using his body as a shield. It was instinct. The same instinct that had kept his Marines alive in Fallujah. The punch came fast. The attacker's fist connected with Daniel's jaw, snapping his head to the side. Pain exploded through his skull. He tasted blood immediately. The world tilted sideways for a second. But Daniel didn't fall. He'd taken worse hits in combat. He'd kept going with a piece of shrapnel in his leg. He'd carried a wounded soldier half a mile through enemy territory. A punch to the face wasn't going to stop him. The attacker seemed shocked that Daniel was still standing. He looked between Daniel and the girl, calculating his odds. Daniel stood his ground, breathing hard, blood running from his split lip. His fists were up. His stance was military precise despite his trembling legs. The attacker made his decision. He let go of the girl and ran. His footsteps echoed off the alley walls as he disappeared onto 7th Street. Daniel turned to check on the girl. She was pressed against the brick wall, crying, her whole body shaking. Her backpack was half off one shoulder. Her phone was cracked on the ground. "You're okay," Daniel said softly, keeping his distance. He didn't want to scare her more. "You're safe now." "He's gone." She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. Then she saw the blood on his face, and her expression changed from fear to something else. Concern, maybe. Her confusion about why the homeless man from across the street had just saved her life. "Are you hurt?" she asked, her voice shaky. Daniel touched his jaw, wincing. "I've had worse." "Are you hurt? Did he get your bag?" "No, You stopped him." She was crying harder now, the shock catching up with her. "He was going to—" "I don't know what he was going to do." "Don't think about it," Daniel said. "It's over. Do you have someone you can call?" Her hands fumbled with her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small device that Daniel didn't recognize. Some kind of emergency button. She pressed it, and a red light started blinking. Within 3 minutes, 2 black SUVs screeched to a stop at both ends of the alley. Men in dark suits poured out, moving with military precision. Security. Professional security. The kind that costs more per hour than Daniel used to make in a week. The head security guy assessed the situation in seconds. He saw the crying girl. He saw Daniel bleeding and disheveled. His hand moved to something under his jacket. A weapon, probably. Step away from her, the security chief ordered, his voice hard. He saved me, the girl said quickly. That man saved me. Someone tried to rob me and he stopped them. But the security team didn't relax. They surrounded Daniel, hands ready, suspicious, because that's what people saw when they looked at him. Not a veteran, not a hero. A threat. Another car arrived. The Blacktown car from this morning. The driver jumped out and opened the back door, and the man in the expensive suit emerged. The girl's father. His face was pale, his hands shaking despite his controlled expression. Katie! He rushed to his daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. Are you okay? What happened? Dad, a man tried to grab me and he saved me. She pointed at Daniel. He stopped the guy. He got hurt protecting me. The father, Mr. Hartwell, looked at Daniel properly for the first time. Daniel saw the calculation in his eyes. The suspicion. The doubt. Rich people don't trust homeless people. That's just how the world works. What happened? Mr. Hartwell asked his daughter, but his eyes stayed on Daniel. Katie explained everything while security swept the alley looking for evidence, checking cameras on nearby buildings. She told her father about walking to her friend's apartment, about the man who followed her, about Daniel's intervention. Through it all, Mr. Hartwell's expression remained guarded. Daniel understood. If he had a daughter, he'd be suspicious too. The world had taught this man to question everything, trust nothing. Especially not convenient heroes who appeared at just the right moment. What do you want? Mr. Hartwell finally asked Daniel directly. His tone was cold, businesslike. Money, a reward? What's your angle here? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Katie pulled away from her father. Dad, what are you saying? He helped me. But Mr. Hartwell held up a hand, silencing her. I'm just asking a reasonable question. We live in a world where people create situations to exploit them. I need to know what we're dealing with. Daniel felt something inside him crack. Not anger exactly, more like profound sadness. This man couldn't even accept a simple act of kindness without suspecting an ulterior motive. That's what money and power did to people, made them see threats everywhere. I don't want anything from you, sir, Daniel said quietly. He wiped blood from his mouth with his dirty hand. I saw someone in trouble, I helped. That's it? That's it? Mr. Hartwell's voice dripped with skepticism. You just happened to be in the right place at the right time? You just happened to risk your life for a stranger? Yes, sir. That's exactly what happened. The security chief was whispering in Mr. Hartwell's ear, probably suggesting background checks, investigations, warnings about scams. Daniel had seen this before. The wealthy lived in a different world, one where kindness always came with a price tag. Katie was crying again, but now she was angry. Dad, why are you being like this? He's bleeding. He got hurt helping me. And you're treating him like a criminal. I'm being careful, Mr. Hartwell said, but his voice softened slightly when he looked at his daughter. I'm making sure you're safe. I am safe. Because of him, Katie pointed at Daniel. And now you're making him feel like he did something wrong. Daniel understood both of them. The father protecting his child. The daughter seeing simple truth that adults complicated. He'd been on both sides of that equation once, back when he had a family. What's your name? Mr. Hartwell asked, shifting tactics. Daniel Rodriguez. Gunnery sergeant, retired. Marines. Something changed in Mr. Hartwell's expression. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. Maybe respect. You served? 21 years, sir. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. Mr. Hartwell studied Daniel's face, his military jacket, the bearing that survived homelessness. And now you're homeless. Yes, sir. Been out here about 8 months. The words hung between them, an entire story compressed into 2 sentences. A lifetime of service reduced to sitting on a sidewalk. Katie moved closer to Daniel and the security team tensed. But she ignored them. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. Thank you for saving me. Just glad I was there, Daniel said. Mr. Hartwell made a decision. Daniel saw it happen, saw the internal calculation shift. Come with us, he said, please. Let us get you to a hospital, get you checked out. It's the least we can do. Daniel shook his head. That's not necessary, sir. I'm fine. You're bleeding, Katie said firmly. And you probably have a concussion. You're coming with us. I'm not asking. Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. This girl had her father's determination, just aimed at better targets. "Sir," the security chief interjected. I don't care what you think," Mr. Hartwell interrupted. "This man helped my daughter. We're going to help him." End of discussion. Daniel wanted to refuse. Pride, shame, and years of isolation told him to walk away, return to his corner, return to invisibility. But Katie was looking at him with such hope, such determination that he couldn't. "Okay," he said finally. "Thank you." The inside of the town car smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Daniel tried to make himself as small as possible, aware of how he must smell after 8 months on the streets. He pressed himself against the door, keeping distance between himself and Katie, who sat beside him despite her father's suggestion that she sit up front. Mr. Hartwell made phone calls from the passenger seat, speaking in the clipped, efficient tone of someone used to solving problems with money and connections. Daniel caught fragments: hospital, private room, security clearance, background check. That last one stung, but Daniel understood it. Trust had to be earned, especially in their world. Katie kept stealing glances at him. "Does it hurt?" she asked, gesturing to his jaw. "I've had worse," Daniel said, which was true. "I'm more worried about getting your car dirty." "It's just a car," she said simply. Then more hesitantly, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. How long were you in the Marines?" 21 years. Joined when I was 18, got out when I was 39. That's a long time." She paused, processing. "Why'd you stop?" Daniel considered how much to tell her. The truth felt too heavy for a 16-year-old girl who'd just been attacked. "Got injured on my last deployment. Decided it was time." It wasn't exactly a lie. His injuries just weren't the kind you could see on an X-ray. "And then you ended up..." She trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence politely. "Homeless," Daniel finished for her. "Yeah, it's a longer story, but the short version is I lost my way for a while. Made bad choices, pushed away everyone who tried to help." "Do you have family?" The question hit harder than the punch in the alley. "I did. Wife, daughter. My daughter would be about your age now, actually. Maybe a little older. 20, I think. Haven't seen her in 5 years. Why not?" Daniel looked out the window at the passing buildings. "Because sometimes you hurt people so badly that the kindest thing you can do is stay away. Let them heal without you." Katie was quiet for a moment. "I bet she misses you." "Maybe. Or maybe she's better off." "I don't think anyone's better off without their dad," Katie said softly. Mr. Hartwell turned around in his seat. "Katie, maybe give Mr. Rodriguez some space. He's been through a lot today." "It's okay," Daniel said. "I don't mind the questions." The hospital was the kind of place Daniel would never have gone on his own. Too nice, too expensive, too many forms requiring addresses and insurance cards he didn't have. But Mr. Hartwell walked them past all of that, speaking to administrators, making things happen with the casual authority of someone whose name opened doors. They put Daniel in a private room. A nurse cleaned the cut on his lip and checked him for other injuries. His jaw wasn't broken, just bruised. No concussion, though the doctor said he was lucky. They gave him antibiotics for an infection in his leg that Daniel hadn't even mentioned. Apparently it showed on the exam. "You should have come in weeks ago," the doctor said, not unkindly. "This could have gotten serious." Daniel didn't bother explaining why he hadn't. People with homes and insurance didn't understand the math of survival. The way you learned to ignore pain because acknowledging it meant spending money you didn't have. When the medical staff left, Mr. Hartwell came back into the room alone. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. His expensive suit looked out of place in the sterile hospital room. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "The way I spoke to you in the alley, that wasn't right." Daniel shrugged. "You were protecting your daughter. I get it. Still, you saved Katie's life and I treated you like a suspect. That says more about me than about you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Why'd you help her? You had no reason to get involved. Could have gotten yourself killed, so why?" Daniel thought about the question. The real answer was complicated, buried under layers of guilt and shame and desperate need to matter again. But he gave the simpler truth. Because I saw someone who needed help and I was there. That's what we're supposed to do, right? Look out for each other? Most people don't, though. Most people would have looked away. Yeah, well, I spent 21 years learning not to look away. Hard habit to break. Mr. Hartwell nodded slowly. "You said you lost your way." Can I ask what happened? So Daniel told him. Not everything, but enough. The deployment, the things he'd seen, the friends he'd lost, the drinking, the downward spiral, the bridges burned. He didn't make excuses or ask for pity, just stated the facts like he was briefing a commanding officer. I got sober 2 years ago, Daniel finished. Went through a program at a veterans shelter. Been clean ever since, but by then there wasn't anything left to go back to. No job, no family, no place to start over. Have you tried the VA? Veterans Services? Daniel almost laughed. Sir, the VA is overwhelmed. I'm on waiting lists for housing, for job training for about 5 different programs. Been on those lists for 18 months. Meanwhile, I sleep on cardboard and hope it doesn't rain. Mr. Hartwell's jaw tightened. That's unacceptable. That's reality for a lot of us. There are good people trying to help, but the system's broken. Too many veterans, not enough resources. Daniel shifted on the hospital bed. But I'm not telling you this to complain. I made my choices. I'm dealing with the consequences. What if I could help? Would you let me? Daniel looked at him carefully. Help how? I don't know yet. But I have resources, connections, I can make calls, open doors. The question is whether you'd be willing to walk through them. Why would you do that? Because Katie's right. You saved her life. And because... Mr. Hartwell paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I walk past you every single day. I've seen you on that corner for months and I never once stopped. Never once asked if you needed anything. I looked right through you like you weren't even there. That's normal, Daniel said. People do that. Normal doesn't make it right. You served this country for 21 years, fought in our wars, protected our freedom, and now you're sleeping on sidewalks while I walk past in $1,000 shoes. Mr. Hartwell's voice was thick with emotion. That's not the country you fought for. That's not the man I want to be. Daniel felt something crack open in his chest. Hope, maybe, or the possibility of hope. It had been so long since anyone had seen him as more than a problem to ignore or a threat to avoid. I'd like to help, Mr. Hartwell continued. If you'll let me. No strings attached. Just one human being helping another. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Let me make some calls. I know people at veterans organizations, housing programs, employment agencies. Good people who can actually help instead of just putting you on another waiting list. Katie appeared in the doorway, carrying a bag from a nearby restaurant. I brought food, she announced. Hospital cafeteria looked gross, so I had the driver get real food. You like burgers, right? I got burgers. She set the bag on the table and the smell hit Daniel like a physical thing. Real food, hot food. His stomach growled audibly. When's the last time you ate? Katie asked. Yesterday afternoon. Had some soup at the church on 3rd Street. Dad. Katie turned to her father. Tell me we're helping him. Mr. Hartwell smiled, the first genuine smile Daniel had seen from him. I'm working on it. They ate together in the hospital room. Daniel tried to eat slowly, but it was hard. His body wanted to inhale everything. Mr. Hartwell made phone calls while they ate, stepping into the hallway but leaving the door open. Daniel heard fragments of conversations. Housing coordinator, job placement, therapy referrals. Katie peppered him with questions between bites. What was Afghanistan like? What's boot camp really like? Did he have any crazy stories? Daniel found himself relaxing, telling stories he hadn't told in years. The funny ones, not the dark ones. The ones about Marines doing stupid things or finding humor in impossible situations. She laughed at his stories. Really laughed. And something in Daniel's heart, something he'd thought was dead, stirred a little. Mr. Hartwell came back into the room with a different expression. More determined. More focused. Okay, he said. Here's what's going to happen. I've got you a room at a hotel for the next week. Clean bed, hot shower, meals included. I've called a friend who runs a transitional housing program for veterans. She's going to meet with you tomorrow. I've also set up an appointment with a therapist who specializes in PTSD. She's got an opening Friday. Daniel stared at him. Sir, I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. And there's more. 3 months later, Daniel stood in front of a mirror in an apartment he could barely believe was his. It was small, just a studio, but it had a bed, a kitchen, a bathroom with a shower that had hot water whenever he wanted it. Things most people took for granted felt like miracles when you'd gone without them. He adjusted his tie, still felt weird wearing one. The navy blue security uniform fit him properly, tailored to his frame. He'd put on 15 pounds since that day in the alley. His face had filled out. The hollowness in his cheeks was gone. But the biggest changes weren't physical. Mr. Hartwell had kept every promise. The hotel room that first week had felt like a palace. Daniel had stood under the hot shower for almost an hour that first night, just letting the water wash away months of grime and shame. He'd slept in a real bed, eaten real meals, worn clean clothes. The transitional housing coordinator, Ms. Chen, had been even better than advertised. She'd helped Daniel navigate the VA bureaucracy, cutting through red tape that would have taken him years to handle alone. She'd connected him with benefits he didn't know he qualified for, found him this apartment through a program for homeless veterans. The therapy sessions were harder, facing the things he'd buried, the memories he'd drowned in alcohol, the guilt that had driven him to the streets. Dr. Patterson didn't let him hide. She made him talk about Afghanistan, about his friend Mike, about the drinking, about his daughter. "You can't heal what you won't acknowledge," she'd told him in their first session, "and you can't move forward if you're carrying all of this alone." So Daniel learned to talk, to sit with the discomfort, to understand that PTSD wasn't weakness or failure. It was an injury, like the shrapnel wound on his leg. It needed treatment, not shame. The job had come as a surprise. Mr. Hartwell hadn't just helped him get into programs. He'd offered Daniel a position at Hartwell Industries, security. Nothing fancy, but it played to his military background. Monitoring cameras, walking the building, responding to situations. Steady pay, benefits, respect. "You know how to assess threats," Mr. Hartwell had explained. "How to stay calm under pressure. How to protect people. That's exactly what I need." Daniel had been terrified he'd screw it up. That first day, walking into that glass building he'd watched from across the street for 8 months felt surreal. People nodded at him in the hallways, called him by name, treated him like he belonged. His supervisor, an ex-cop named Rodriguez, had taken him under his wing. "Hartwell told me about you," Rodriguez said that first day. "What you did for his daughter. That took guts. You're going to do fine here." And somehow Daniel had. The work gave him structure, purpose, a reason to get up in the morning beyond just surviving another day. The paycheck let him buy groceries, pay rent, start rebuilding a life. But the most unexpected change was his relationship with the Hartwell family. Mr. Hartwell had invited him to dinner that first week. "Just a casual thank you," he'd said. But it became a pattern. Every Tuesday evening, Daniel would join them for dinner. Sometimes at their home, sometimes at a restaurant, sometimes just the three of them. Sometimes with Mrs. Hartwell, who'd been traveling during the attack. Katie treated him like family. She'd text him during the week, sharing stories about school, asking his advice about things, college applications, friend drama, whether she should take AP Physics or stick with regular, normal teenager stuff that had nothing to do with what he'd done in the alley. "You remind me of my daughter," Daniel had told her once. "The way you see the world, the way you care about things. Do you think about her a lot?" Katie had asked. "Every day. You should find her." Daniel had shaken his head. "I don't think that's a good idea. Too much time has passed. Too much hurt." But Katie had a way of not letting things go. 2 months after the attack, she'd cornered him after dinner. "Can I show you something?" she'd asked, pulling out her laptop. She'd been volunteering at a veterans center inspired by Daniel's story. Her school project on veteran homelessness had evolved into something bigger. She'd interviewed dozens of veterans, compiled statistics, created a presentation that she'd given to the city council. "Look at this," she'd said, showing him a program she'd helped design. "We're connecting local businesses with veterans who need jobs. Real jobs, not charity. Using their skills, giving them opportunities." Daniel had felt pride swell in his chest. "This is amazing, Katie. You inspired it. You showed me that the people we ignore on the streets have stories, have value, that they fought for us and we forgot them." "I didn't fight to be remembered," Daniel had said quietly. "I fought because it needed doing. I know. That's what makes it worse. You didn't ask for anything and we gave you nothing." She'd closed the laptop and looked at him seriously. "But I'm trying to change that. One veteran at a time." Now, 3 months later, Daniel finished adjusting his tie and headed to work. The morning routine felt good. Normal. He stopped for coffee at the shop on the corner where the barista knew his order. He walked past his old corner on 5th Avenue where someone else sat now, and he dropped a 20 in their cup. Been there, he said when the man looked up in surprise. Stay strong. At work, he settled into his shift, monitoring the security feeds, walking the floors, checking access points. Boring work, but steady, reliable. The kind of work that let him sleep without nightmares because he'd earned his rest honestly. Around noon, Mr. Hartwell stopped by the security office. Daniel, got a minute? They walked to Mr. Hartwell's office, which still made Daniel nervous. The view from the 40th floor showed the entire city. The corner where he'd spent 8 months was visible in the distance. I wanted to talk to you about something, Mr. Hartwell said, sitting on the edge of his desk rather than behind it. More casual, more equal. We're expanding our Veterans Initiative. Katie's project caught some attention. The mayor wants to talk about scaling it citywide. That's incredible. It is. And I want you to be part of it, not just security. I want you to help coordinate the employment program. You know what veterans need. You know the challenges. You'd be perfect. Daniel hesitated. I'm not sure I'm qualified for that. You're more qualified than anyone else I could hire. You've lived it. You understand it. And you've got the leadership skills. Military training doesn't just disappear. Mr. Hartwell leaned forward. Think about it. You'd be helping other veterans find their way back. Like people helped you. Like you helped me, Daniel corrected. Like you let me help you, Mr. Hartwell said. That took courage too. Accepting help is hard, especially when you've lost everything. Daniel looked out the window at the city below. 6 months ago, he'd been invisible, forgotten, convinced he didn't matter anymore. Now he was being offered a chance to help others avoid that same fate. I'll do it, he said. Mr. Hartwell smiled. Good, because Katie already told everyone you agreed. She's been planning your first project for weeks. Despite himself, Daniel laughed. That girl doesn't take no for an answer. She learned it from her mother, and apparently from you. Mr. Hartwell stood and extended his hand. Welcome to the team. The real team. They shook hands, and Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just gratitude, but belonging. Purpose. The sense that his story wasn't over yet, that the worst chapters didn't define the whole book. That evening, Daniel went to his regular therapy session. Dr. Patterson listened to his update about the new job, the expanding veterans program, how stable things felt. How are you handling all the changes? She asked. Better than I expected. It's a lot, but good. And your daughter? Have you thought more about reaching out? Daniel had been thinking about it constantly. Katie's words echoed in his head. You should find her. But the fear was still there. The shame, the certainty that he'd hurt her too badly to be forgiven. I don't know if I'm ready, Daniel admitted. When will you be ready? Maybe never. Maybe that's okay. Dr. Patterson tilted her head. Is it? You've rebuilt your life. You're helping others rebuild theirs. But you're still carrying this guilt about your daughter. When do you forgive yourself? The question sat heavy in the room. What if I reach out and she doesn't want to hear from me? Daniel asked quietly. What if I'm just reopening old wounds? What if you reach out and she's been hoping you would? What if she's carrying the same guilt, thinking you don't want to see her? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. Later that night, back in his apartment, Daniel sat with his laptop open. He'd searched for his daughter before, but never had the courage to actually reach out. Now her social media profile was on his screen. Melissa Rodriguez, 20 years old, college student in Colorado. She had his eyes, the same shape, same color. In her pictures, she looked happy, surrounded by friends, living a life that seemed full and complete without him. His finger hovered over the message button. What would he even say? Sorry wasn't enough. Explanation felt like excuses. 5 years of silence couldn't be summed up in a Facebook message. His phone buzzed. A text from Katie. Dinner Tuesday? Dad wants to talk about the Veterans Program expansion. Also, I have a surprise for you. Daniel smiled and texted back. I'll be there. He closed the laptop without sending the message to his daughter. Not yet, maybe not ever. Some bridges burned too completely to rebuild. But as he got ready for bed in his own apartment, in his own space, Daniel realized something. He was grateful. For the first time in years, genuinely grateful to be alive, to have another chance, to matter again, and maybe that was enough for now. Tuesday dinner at the Hartwell house had become Daniel's favorite part of the week. The sense of belonging, of family. Katie answered the door, practically bouncing with excitement. You're here! I have a surprise for you. What did you do? Daniel asked, smiling at her energy. Over dinner, Katie was unusually quiet, checking her phone nervously. Finally, she took a deep breath. So you know how I've been working on the Veterans Project? She began. I was researching success stories and I found this woman in Colorado who started a support group for children of veterans. Kids whose parents struggled with PTSD or homelessness. Daniel's heart started racing. Her name is Melissa Rodriguez, Katie continued, watching his face. The article mentioned her father was a Marine veteran she'd lost contact with years ago. She paused. I found her, Daniel. I told her about you, and she wants to talk to you. She's been trying to find you for 2 years. Your letters never reached her. She thought you'd given up on her. Daniel couldn't breathe. She wants to talk to me? She's here, Katie said softly. In the living room. She drove 6 hours to see you. Daniel walked to the living room on shaking legs. 5 years of believing he'd lost her forever. 5 years of shame and certainty that he'd destroyed that relationship beyond repair. She stood by the window. When she turned around, Daniel's breath caught. 20 years old now, strong, confident, beautiful. Hi, Dad, Melissa said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry, Daniel managed. For everything. For leaving. For not being there. Melissa crossed the room and hugged him tight. Daniel stood frozen, then hugged her back, and all the walls he'd built came crashing down. He cried, deep, racking sobs he'd held in for 5 years. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you so much. They sat on the couch and talked for hours. Melissa told him about college, her social work degree, her support group helping veterans' families. Daniel told her about his journey from the streets to stability, about finding purpose again. I'm proud of you, Dad, Melissa said. Those words hit harder than anything. You're proud of me? So proud. You hit bottom and climbed back out. That takes real courage. Later, walking Melissa to her car, she turned to him. I know we can't get those 5 years back, but we can start from here, build something new. If you want to. I want to, Daniel said, voice thick with emotion, more than anything. As Melissa drove away, Daniel stood looking up at the stars. 8 months ago, he'd been sleeping on cardboard, invisible, convinced his story was over. Now he had a job, an apartment, a purpose, his daughter back in his life. A family in the Hartwells who'd seen him when everyone else looked away. Katie came outside and stood beside him. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. Katie, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life, Katie said simply. I just gave you yours back. You showed me that one person caring can change everything. Daniel had spent 21 years protecting people in uniform. He'd thought that part of his life was over. But he'd learned something important. Service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. Sometimes courage looks like accepting help when you're too proud to ask. Sometimes service looks like refusing to let another person stay invisible. Sometimes protection looks like a teenage girl seeing the humanity in a homeless veteran and deciding his story wasn't over yet. One act of kindness in an alley had changed 2 lives, but the ripples spread wider. Katie's veterans program would help hundreds. Melissa's support group would help hundreds more. Mr. Hartwell's new perspective would influence everyone around him, because that's how change happens, through individual choices. One person deciding to look instead of looking away. One person deciding to help instead of walking past. Daniel had been invisible for 8 months, but Katie had seen him, and that had made all the difference. Now it was his turn to see others. To prove that no one is beyond saving, no story is truly over. And every person matters. Even the homeless veteran on the corner that everyone walks past without seeing. Especially him. 1 year later, Daniel stood in front of a room full of people at the city's Veterans Center. Business owners, city officials, veterans, and volunteers, all gathered for the launch of the expanded program that had grown from a simple idea into something that could change lives. He adjusted his tie nervously. Public speaking still wasn't his favorite thing, but this mattered too much to let fear stop him. A year and a half ago, I was sitting on a corner of 5th Avenue, Daniel began, his voice steady, invisible, forgotten, convinced my life was over at 46 years old. I'd served my country for 21 years, but I couldn't serve myself. Couldn't save myself? He paused, looking at the faces watching him. Some veterans nodded, recognizing their own stories in his words. Then something happened that changed everything. I saw someone in trouble and I helped. That's it. Nothing heroic or special. Just one person helping another person. But that simple act opened a door I thought was closed forever. Katie sat in the front row next to her parents, smiling encouragement. Beside them sat Melissa, who'd driven in from Colorado for the event. The Hartwell family didn't just help me get back on my feet, Daniel continued. They showed me something I'd forgotten, that everyone deserves to be seen, to be valued, to get a second chance. And they taught me that helping one person can create ripples that reach hundreds. He clicked to the next slide, showing statistics, numbers that represented real people, real lives changed. In the past year, our program has helped 243 veterans find employment. 117 have secured stable housing. 89 are receiving mental health support they couldn't access before. But these aren't just numbers. These are fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, people who served their country and then felt abandoned by it. Daniel's voice grew stronger. My daughter, Melissa, runs support groups for veterans' families. Because healing isn't just about the veteran. It's about the whole family. The kids who don't understand why dad can't sleep. The spouses who feel helpless watching someone they love struggle. The parents who blame themselves. Melissa wiped tears from her eyes, proud and emotional. Today we're expanding into 5 more cities, Daniel announced. We're partnering with businesses who understand that hiring veterans isn't charity. It's smart business. We're creating housing programs that don't just give people a place to sleep, but help them rebuild their lives. We're connecting veterans with mental health, professionals who understand what they've been through. He looked directly at Mr. Hartwell. None of this happens without people who choose to see instead of looking away, people who choose to help instead of walking past, people who believe that everyone matters. The room erupted in applause. Daniel stepped away from the podium, overwhelmed by the response. After the formal presentations, people crowded around to talk. Veterans thanking him, business owners wanting to join the program, city officials discussing funding. It was loud and chaotic and beautiful. Later that evening, the core group gathered at the Hartwell house. Daniel, Melissa, the Hartwell family, and a few key program coordinators. They sat around the dining table celebrating quietly. Remember when you asked me what I wanted? Daniel said to Mr. Hartwell. Back in the alley right after everything happened. Mr. Hartwell nodded. I'm still embarrassed I asked that. Don't be. Because now I know the answer. Daniel looked around the table at the people who'd become his family. I wanted this. Not the job or the apartment or even seeing my daughter again. Though those things changed my life. I wanted to matter. To know that my existence made a difference. That's what you gave me. Katie raised her glass. To second chances. To seeing people, Mrs. Hartwell added. To family, Melissa said. Looking at her father with love, they clinked glasses. This unlikely group brought together by chance and bonded by choice. Daniel thought about all the veterans still out there. Still struggling, still waiting for someone to see them. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But now there was hope. Real, tangible hope. One homeless veteran on a corner had become a movement. One act of kindness had created a wave of change. One girl who refused to look away had reminded an entire city that everyone deserves dignity. And somewhere tonight, another veteran would get a hot meal, a place to sleep, or a job interview. Another family would get support. Another person would be seen instead of ignored, because Daniel had learned the most important lesson of all. We save ourselves by saving each other. We find purpose by giving others hope. We become human by refusing to let anyone become invisible. His story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and he was going to spend the rest of his life making sure other veterans got the same chance he did. The chance to come home, not to a place but to themselves.